Good morning, everybody. We've been discussing about the mechanisms in hearing, wherein we came to know the functions of external ear, middle ear, internal ear, with the generation of receptor potential and the molecular basis. In a nutshell, we discussed about theories of hearing. Today's class, mainly we discussed about the transmission of the sound waves across the three ear parts of the ears. So today's class, to understand the pitch and intensity, we need to know what is auditory processing. So how the processing takes place from the receptor to the cortex, that is the pitch and the loudness, that is the frequency and the loudness. So to understand this, we need to know what is mechanism of hearing. The sound waves transmitted to the internal ear usually moves the basilar membrane, and the air cells which are situated on it get stimulated, producing or generating the receptor potential due to the entry of potassium from the endolymph. This receptor potential generates action potential in the auditory nerve, which is carried to the CNS and the sound is heard. Normally, if it was a cutaneous sense, there wouldn't have been any problem. But as in hearing, we have variety of sounds, and that has to be discriminated with respect to frequency, amplitude, tone and overtone, and also with respect to localization, and we need to disappear or understand the meaning of the sound. For example, if you tell sit down, it can be it can be in the form of command or request or affection. So the probable mechanism of hearing is explained as follows, based on the frequency analysis and the complex nature of the sound. How do we analyze the frequency? That is the pitch. Normal audible range from the last two classes we've been discussing is about 20 to 20,000 hertz through the human ears, and the best heard is between 1000 to 3000 hertz, which can be detected with very small range of frequency change. It makes clear how difficult is the task to analyze each of this frequency in a 32 mm long basilar membrane with 20,000 to 30,000 fibers with only 3,500 inner ear cells. One possibility is that the sound waves of low frequency may have action potential of identical frequency in the auditory nerves. That means the low frequencies will have identical frequency in the action potential. But this is not possible for higher frequency, as the maximum possible rate of discharge in the action potential can be produced up to 1000 per second. Hence, it is presumed that the sound waves in the scala vestibuli creates waves according to its frequency, and there is a maximum movement of specific part of the basilar membrane at a particular frequency. That is, the higher frequency resonate at the initial part and the lower frequency toward the end. The air cells situated there are stimulated. The impulse from the highest stimulated hair cell is sharpened by lateral inhibition on the way to the brain, which then finally analyzes the frequency. The second component in today's class is how do we disappear the complex nature of each sound entering the ear. It may be presumed that each sound affects the activity of group of hair cells and ultimately develop a spatial pattern of activity involving a group of fibers in the auditory nerve. This pattern is analyzed at higher levels of CNS for the quality of the sound in detailed. And finally, we have the loudness is carried by the alteration of the frequency of action potential in the stimulated nerve. That is, increasing strength of stimulus increases the frequency, and also through the recruitment of more nerve fibers. So there has to be frequency analysis and the complex nature. Complex nature is different group activity of the group of hair cells ultimately develop a spatial pattern involving group of fibers. And the localization is based on the alteration of the frequency of action potential. For all this, again, we need to understand the concept of basilar membrane, how it is stiff, elastic, and reed-like at one end and free at the apex, long and slender at the apex. The base is near the foot plate of the stapes, that is the oval window. Because of this, it vibrates like a reeds of harmonica. The length of the basilar fibers increases progressively as one goes from the base to the apex. The overall stiffness also decreases. The stiff, short fibers vibrate at high frequency while the long, slender fibers at low frequency. You can see that at the base, that is from the stapes, it's around 5000 hertz and it propagates almost the whole length, and but the maximum wavelength is at only one point, that is from 13 mm from the footplate of the stapes. But for 2000 frequency it is 17 mm, and as you keep going towards the end, that is from 31 mm, it's only the 30 frequency or 300. So we need to understand that there is each part and it continues. It is just wave which progresses, which is based on different theories which we discussed. The Helmholtz theory describing it as a piano bass where each key represents a frequency, or the Rutherford's telephone theory, which each part of them responds. And finally, we had the most von Beckesy's accepted theory, where each of the area respond to a different frequency. One was the rate of discharge in the action potential. So we are understanding different concepts of hearing. So how is pitch discriminated or the frequency discriminated? As you all know, the bone marrow varies in thickness and stiffness along its length, and it is high at the initial part and low at the apex. It is not linear. In a musical instrument, there is what is called as octave. It's around 8 parts in a music, and each octave requires 3.5 to 4 mm on the basilar membrane. So every frequency there is one section of the basilar membrane that responds to the best. There is one group of hair cells that also responds to the best. So we determine the pitch by which set of hair cells signals to the most. So each section of basilar membrane, and each section of the hair cells respond to a different pitch. So when you talk about the place theory, that is vibration is a function of with respect to time. It also functions on the distance along the basilar membrane. For example, for 5000 it was 13 mm, and the neural activity as a function of the distance. So it is 13 mm. Finally, the sensation of pitch is perceived. Holy principle. The apex of the cochlea contains units which respond to lower octaves of the sound. That is, it responds only to the tones which are around 2000 Hz, which are clear, synchronous volley of action potential in the 8th cranial nerve, which are produced. This is Rowley's principle. What are the factors which affects the pitch of the sound? It can be either the frequency, the loudness, and the duration of around 0.01 seconds. If you take the pathway, as you all came to know how from the spiral ganglion, the air cells form the axons and it synapses with the spiral ganglion. It continues, goes to the dorsal and ventral cochlear nucleus. From there it ascends up to the trapezoid, crosses over to the opposite side, goes through the lateral lemniscus into the inferior colliculus and medial geniculate body where auditory reflexes are analyzed and goes ascends or projects to the auditory cortex. This is the superior gyrus of the temporal lobe, the main area being 41, and also it projects onto the reticular formation and superior olive. So what does the auditory cortex do? How is the representation? It has a tonotopic. Tono means frequency and topic means map. There is an orderly arrangement of this frequency sensitivity. It is concerned with recognition of tonal patterns, analysis of properties of sound and sound localization. Genesis of action potential in the afferent fiber. As we came to know how the fine processes which connect one cilia to another, the stereocilia, called as tip links, tie the tips of the stereocilias to the side of the highest one. That means the one which has the, from the modular side, the length of the stereocilia increases. At their junction, there appears to be mechanically sensitive cation channels in the higher process, which, when depolarized, potassium, which is the most abundant in the endolimb, secreted from the stria vascularis, and calcium enters via this channel, causing depolarization. It is also, potassium is recycled back to the endolimb. So what are the questions which keep on asking you? How does the brain interpret the loudness of sound, the pitch of the sound and direction of the sound? The loudness is usually the frequency of action potential in a single auditory. One among the theories explains this, that is the Rutherford's. The frequency of action potential in a single auditory nerve fiber is proportionate to the loudness of the sound stimulus. At low sound intensities, each axon discharges to sounds of only one frequency, and this varies from axon to axon. At higher sound intensity, the individual axon discharges to a wider spectrum of sound frequency. So loudness is interpreted by the number of action potential or the frequency of action potential, the rate of discharge. Whereas the pitch or the frequency depends on the part of the basilar membrane stimulated. At frequency less than 2000, there may be a pattern of action potential in the auditory nerve, which are the lower octave. With low frequency, there is an impulse with each cycle of the sound wave called as the Wallis effect. What is the interaural time difference? In between the ears, ear can detect the delay in arrival between the ears quite well. This translates into a cone of confusion, and we came to know there are three factors that represents approximately one angle of arrival around the axis connecting the two ears. And the three reasons we discussed was, one is time lag mechanism and difference in intensity, and to some extent the pinna also plays a role in the vertical localization, and the ear responds reflexly. So a time gap of around 0.02 milliseconds between the two ears helps to detect the direction of the sound by lateral superior olivary nucleus. The medial superior olivary nucleus has neurons with dendrites in the left and right direction, which pick up sounds from the respective ears. So this is how the auditory processing. From the auditory nerve, which is the rate of firing in the action or rate of discharge in each nerve, to the processing in the olivary nucleus, and how the tonotopic maps in the auditory cortex. So the next topic is, what is deafness? Impairment of hearing. It may be partial or complete. If it is since birth, it results in dumbness, inability to speak, because to learn how to produce sounds, one needs to hear the sounds. So, normally it can be a deaf mute. The commonest ones are, there are different varieties, they say 5 types, but let us know the common things, which is conductive deafness, sensory neural deafness. Conductive deafness is between, there is a impairment in the external and middle ear where the transmission cannot take place or the conduction does not take place. If there is the cochlear involvement, it is the internal ear. When both are together, it is mixed deafness. There is also what is called as central deafness, called as diplacusis, Diplacusis, a false sense of pitch and tinnitus. Tinnitus means ringing in the ears. Tinnitus is thought to be due to hypersensitivity of hair cells. Deafness is, if you take the conductive deafness, it is with the interference with the conduction of sound. It interferes with the sound waves reaching the neuroepithelium. For example, wax, the cerebellum in the external auditory canal, perforation of tympanic membrane, loss of mobility or of the ossicles. If there is otosclerosis, that is, there is no mobility in the ossicular chain, destruction of the ossicular chain can lead to conductive deafness. The characteristic features are hearing impairment with some tests being negative, particularly the Renes test is negative, and the Weber's test, patient hears better by the deceased ear. Then you will come to know what is it in the next slide. So the nerve deafness, you treat the cause. For example, eustachian tube, which helps in equalization of air when there is a catarrh, when there is an infection of eustachian tube. That's what they advise. For any obstruction in eustachian tube while the flight takes off, you need to chew for equalizing. So the treatment can be either remove the wax or do tympanoplasty or mastodectomy if there is otitis media, that is severe infection in the middle ear, which can be ASOM or CSOM, acute suppurative otitis media or chronic suppurative otitis media, or if the ear ossicles in the form of otosclerosis. So all the cause has to be treated. So what is sensory neural deafness? The nerve deafness, if there is a lesion of the cochlea or the eighth cranial nerve, it can be either congenital sensory neural deafness or acquired sensory neural deafness. Normally, if it is labyrinthitis, infection of the labyrinth, when there is an acoustic trauma, exposure to very loud sound can damage the organ of Corti and produce deafness. Noise trauma, that is noise induced hearing loss. Ototoxic, whenever the aminoglycosides antibiotics are like streptomycin and gentamicin cause destruction of stereocilia of hair cells, leading to degeneration of the cell. Other causes can be the neoplasm, that is the tumors of the vestibulocochlear nerve or cerebellopontine angle. In nerve deafness, the defect is in the organ of Corti or the cochlear nerve. It can be unilateral or bilateral. So the tests will be differing. The characteristic features also impairment and treat the cause. So what are the tests we come across? The commonest tests are Renes test, Weber's test and Schwab's test. Here we use a tuning fork with a frequency of 256 Hz. You strike the base of the prongs of the tuning fork in the hypothenar eminence and place it over the mastoid process. This is bone conduction. That means the conduction is taking place in the bone. Once the sound disappears over there, place it in front of the ear. I mean to say that if it is heard in front of the ear, it is air conduction. So in Rene's test, it is always air conduction should be better than bone conduction. Then it is called Rene's positive. In Weber's test, you strike the prongs of the tuning fork with 256 Hz and place it in center of the forehead. Normally doesn't get moved towards both the ears. That is no lateralization. If it gets lateralized, Schwab's test is the watch test. So commonly we do Rene's and Weber's test. So in conductive deafness, where there is a damage to the middle ear or the external ear, usually the bone conduction is better than air conduction. That means it's greater than air conduction. That is Rene's negative. And if you place the the base of the tuning fork in the center of the forehead, it is getting lateralized to the affected ear. That if there is a damage in the right ear, it gets lateralized. Okay? And better conduction and patience. In sensory neural deafness, air conduction is better than bone conduction in partial deafness. In Weber's test, the patient hears better than by the normal ear. That is, it is lateralized towards the normal ear. In Schwabach's test, the bone conduction is worse than normal. The patient talks loudly in nerve deafness. So, the common tests are Rene's test. Normally, it is Rene's positive, that is, air conduction is better than bone conduction. It doesn't get lateralized. It is heard equally on both the sides. Then if it is lateralized to the affected ear, when it is heard in the affected ear, then it means okay. So these are the tuning fork tests and the interpretation to diagnose conductive and sensory hearing loss. If you are unable to do this, we want to be more specific, then mixed deafness we do both conductive and sensory neural loss present in the same ear. The test we do is audiometry. Here the auditory acuity is defined as sharpness of hearing is measured using an instrument called audiometer. Device presents the subject with pure tones of various frequency through earphone. At each frequency, the threshold intensity is determined and plotted on a graph as percentage of normal hearing called as auditory curve. The prerequisites for this test is it should be a soundproof room. Each ear should be tested separately. The air conduction threshold is measured for tones like 125, 250, 500, 1000, 2000 and 4000 Hz. Bone conduction threshold for 250, 500, 1000, 2000 and 4000 Hz. The threshold for bone conduction is a measure of cochlear function. How do we diagnose? The difference in the threshold of air conduction and bone conduction is a measure of degree of conductive deafness. Maximum hearing is recorded at frequency between 1000 to 3000 Hz. A graph can be plotted with frequency of the sound in Hertz on the x-axis and hearing loss in decibels on the y-axis. This graph helps to distinguish between the nerve deafness and conductive deafness. So there are different tests, tympanometry or otoscope, where we directly visualize the damage to the tympanic membrane or if there is any discharge from the middle ear. So that is audiometry. Otoscope, wherever you go they put a round thing around the end and directly they examine the ear. So there is a otoscope, there is audiometry, there is tympanometry, there are different acoustic impedance tests. And with the advances of hearing aid, there is amazing clinical relevance in treatment modalities have changed. And also with cochlear implants, the internal ear can be treated if there is any neural deafness. So the cochlear implants are very essential. The last part, but the most important, is masking. Presence of one type of sound decreases the ability of the ear to another type of sound. For example, if you go to a market, many people are talking, it is not audible. Even in the class, we tell one of you respond. This is masking. In other words, masking represents the inability of the auditory mechanism to separate the simultaneous stimulation into separate compartments. It is an important protective mechanism which prevents damage due to chronic noise. It is a sort of ear plugging, like closing the ears with cotton ball. This occurs as follows. In a noisy environment like railway station, marketplace, tympanic reflex is initiated, which is reflex contraction of middle ear muscles, the tensor tympani and stapedius, due to loud sounds. This leads to partial fixation of tympanic membrane by the tensor tympani and also fixation of the footplate of stapes by the stapedius. This prevents transmission of sound to some extent and prevents damage. These persons will not hear the low intensity sounds. That is why, to draw attention of somebody, one is to call loudly in a noisy environment. There is something called as boiler's noise disease. That is, when you are working in making boilers, that is loud noise, constantly exposure of the ear to the particular frequency of sound. Particular people working in factories will be exposed to a particular frequency, and the ear cells is responding to that frequency gets damaged. If the duration of exposure is more, the damage will be more. An example of acoustic trauma is boiler maker's disease. If the air cells is responding to 4000 Hz of damage, he may not be able to appreciate that frequency, and regeneration is not possible. So with this, we have come to the end of the audition or hearing class. So you came to know what is the function of external ear, a 5 marker of middle ear functions, impedance matching, then internal ear, where they may ask you just organ of quality. You should know in detail how to draw the inner ear cells and the outer ear cells and their functions, how the receptor potential is generated along the axons of the cochlear nerve, and how it reaches the dorsal and ventral cochlear nuclei, ascends upwards to the trapezoid and moves along the crosses to the opposite side, and along the lateral lemnisci moves to the medial geniculate body and projects to the superior. There are also connections to the opposite side at 3 levels. One is the commissure of Probst and the lateral lemnisci. That is the reason whenever one ear is affected, there is no absolute loss of hearing. So this is about auditory pathway, and to some extent you should know what is the mechanism of hearing and transmission of sound waves. Theories of hearing and deafness. 3 marker of audiometry has been asked frequently. Thank you.